All right, guys, welcome to another live stream. Welcome to another live stream. In today's live stream, we're going to talk about 5 ways that you can avoid starting in a financial deficit. You don't want to start in a financial deficit. Starting at zero is great, but it gives you the ambition to work harder. You see other people achieve their goals, and starting at zero is a great thing because it just gives you that ambition to want more. But you don't want to start in a deficit, and I think you can avoid that by avoiding these 5 things that I'm going to go over. Make sure you write these 5 things down. Make sure you try to avoid them at all costs. And just remember, I'm a guy, so I'm talking from the guy perspective. That's the only way I could give it. But it could apply to everybody, right? You can just take the guy perspective and turn it into your version. All right. So number one, the first thing to avoid a financial deficit is to not get into a bunch of credit card debt. You don't want to get into a bunch of credit card debt. Credit cards give you a high interest rate that you need to pay if you have credit card debt. So I know sometimes it's not avoidable. Sometimes you need to use credit cards to get by, to get through a certain situation. So sometimes it's not avoidable. Sometimes you don't make enough money to where you need to put something on a credit card. But I would say in those scenarios, at least try to have a plan to pay off the credit card debt very quickly. So that way you don't let it sit there for a long period of time and you accumulate all that debt. Like I said, typically most credit cards charge you 20 to 25% annually. So you definitely don't want to get charged that. And if you are getting charged that, just make sure you have a plan to pay it off quickly. Now, there is some things that you could take advantage of if you do have credit card debt. There are balance transfers to where you could transfer it to another bank. Maybe you could transfer it to the same bank, but typically they don't let you transfer it within the same bank. You have to transfer it over to a different bank. So yeah, you could take advantage of balance transfers, and that will basically allow you to move that credit card balance and move it to a different bank at a lower APR, or they may offer a 0% interest APR as well. So you could defer that credit card interest for an extended period amount of time until you have enough money to actually pay off the credit card balance. But yeah, credit card balance. I think right now a lot of people are in credit card debt, and this is because they just put a lot of unnecessary things on their credit card when they could have probably done without those things. A lot of those things are leisure activities, entertainment, stuff like that. So yeah, I think avoiding that in the beginning is definitely going to not put you in a deficit. And even if you're starting at zero, at least you're not in credit card debt, right? All right. So that's number one. Number two is toxic relationships. Now, again, like I said, I can only speak from the guy perspective. I can't speak from anything else. So for me, I was, and I'll give you a background story. I was giving, not on me, I was watching a podcast, and I've seen this a couple of times. There was a guy on the podcast. Not going to name the podcast, but the guy was a single guy, and he was dating a woman with 2 kids. Now the guy didn't have any kids, and I'm not saying it's bad to date somebody with kids or 1 kid or 2 kids, but again, he was a single guy, pretty young, and no debt, no kids. And you got to understand, if a woman wants to get with you and she has 2 kids, most likely she wants you at some point to help take care of those kids. Maybe not full capacity, but maybe be that stepdad or something like that. That's going to come along the way. Maybe not in the beginning, but it's probably going to come pretty soon. And for a single guy that doesn't have any kids, I think that would be starting a deficit. Right now, you basically picked up 2 kids that are not yours. And again, I'm not saying this doesn't make sense. If he had a kid already, maybe that would make sense in that capacity. And again, I'm speaking from the perspective of trying to get ahead in your business, trying to prosper financially. I don't think that's the best deal for that guy, right? Or any guy, right? So, toxic relationships, it may not be toxic, but it may not be the best situation to grow your finances. I think it'll put you in a deficit. And I think those situations you definitely need to scope out a little bit better. And I'll give you another example. Let's say, it's you're trying to get with a girl that she likes to spend a lot. She likes to go here, she likes to go there. That type of relationship is not good as well, because there's going to be a money outflow. There's going to be some type of liability that's put on you to go out every weekend, to go this place, go to that place, and those places are going to cost money. And you want to build that business, build that side income, build those investments, so that way you are not starting at a deficit. It's already hard to make 100K or save up to 100K or get to your first seven figures or whatever your dream is. It's going to already be hard to do that. And if you're at a deficit, if you're in a toxic relationship where now you got to again, maybe not call it toxic, but toxic to your financial situation, let's just say that. If you're in a situation where you got to now potentially take care of two kids or be with a person that's always out there spending, you are going to lose a lot of money in that process, and it's going to derail you from getting to your financial goals. So I think if you can prevent that in the beginning, maybe all throughout your 20s, early 30s, maybe that's a situation that you get on later on when you have your financial situation all together. That probably makes a little more sense, but not to do that in the beginning because, again, it's just going to be extra liability that you have to take care of that you really didn't need to. A lot of these things are avoidable. It's just looking at the situation and saying, hey, is this person right for my financial goals that I have currently? Maybe it's something good for me down the line, but I can't take on that responsibility right now because it's just going to set me back financially. So yeah, that's I think toxic relationships is one of those. It could apply to family members. It could apply to your spouse, your partner, all that. And I think you just need to analyze those situations a little bit better to make sure that they align with your financial goals. All right. So number three, I see this all the time too. I live downtown. And most people, again, you could agree or disagree, but from what I see, this does put you in a deficit financially. And this is pets. Now, I'm not saying you can never get a pet, right? But I'm just saying, if you want to grow that business, if you want to grow your finances, maybe a pet in the beginning years is not the best idea. I see people all the time. They have all these goals. I want to start this business. I want to start that business. And again, you got to remember, most people work a 9 to 5. So the time you're going to need to start your business is the time after work. But I see people walking the dog, playing with the dog at the dog park. And most people are going to be like, oh, it's only a few hours. But that's a few hours that you're not going to get back. And that's a few hours that could have went to the business. And again, most people are tired after work. So now you're allocating a few hours to walk the dog or whatever you have and playing with the dog. And that's after work. You're going to have to do that throughout the day. The dog needs to be walked throughout the day. And then also, some people do pay for other people to walk the dog. That's still money coming out of your pocket. People are not going to walk your dog for free. You have to pay for that. You might have certain instances where you have maybe a roommate that'll walk it for free, but that's not everybody. Most people will have to pay for that type of service. And all the additional costs that come with the dog. The dog might get sick. And again, I'm just using the dog because that's what I see most people with. The dog might get sick. The dog needs food. The dog needs to get played with. If you need to travel, that's another expense that you need to pay to have the dog. So I'm saying if your goal is to have a certain amount of money. If it's a very high financial goal, and not even a high financial goal, I think standard, if you're trying to even save up to 50, 100K, these things are going to put you in a deficit because it's going to take your time and it's going to take your resources. Again, we're not saying you can never have a pet. We're just saying in those earlier years, you want to be focused, and delaying having a pet will probably help you along the way. It's going to give you back time, and again, it's going to give you back resources. Most people are going to be like, "Oh, I want a dog." Most people get emotional. This is not an emotional channel. This is financial nutrition. We're here to better your finances. We're here to give you tools and tips, or tips, let's just say tips and tricks to better your finances. And from what I could see, a dog is not going to help you move that along, move those financial goals along. It's going to set you back a little bit because, again, it's time and resources that you have to spend. Most people get into it emotionally, and you're making an emotional decision. Some people can't be alone. They need the dog, I guess. I'm not sure. But I think if you were busy enough, you probably wouldn't need that companionship in the beginning. And again, I'm going to repeat it again because most people are going to say, "Oh, well, I love my dog." This has nothing to do with that. It has to do with delaying that decision until you meet your financial goals, right? If I'm a person barely, like, not able to pay rent, barely able to pay rent, barely able to get my groceries, barely able to put gas in my car, barely able to pay the utility bills, does it make sense to bring a pet into that equation where now I have to pay for food, now I have to pay for medical expenses, and all these other type of expenses that are to come in when you have a pet? So yeah, that's one thing I see a lot on average, and most people don't consider that. Most people look at it as a plus, but if you really think about it financially, it's holding some people back, or at least putting them into a deficit in the beginning. So yeah, that was the third thing that I noticed. And yeah, again, I'm not against getting a pet, but I would just, think about the timing in which you do that, and does it align with your financial goals. All right, number four, right? Number four, let me just make sure. Number one was credit card. Number two is toxic relationships. Number three was pet. Number four is getting a home. Again, I think a home could be an asset at a certain point of your life, but I think in the beginning, if you're going to allocate a huge down payment to that home, that's money that could be put in the market. That's money that could be put in a stock, in a crypto asset that could do a 3 to 4x. Now, is every crypto and stock asset going to do a 3 to 4x? No, but the right ones will. And I think if you do your research and you put the time in, you can find those. They're not that hard to find, especially in a bull market that we're in now. I know we've been in a bear market for the last 2 to 3 years. Most people are skeptical about all markets. When the market goes down, everything's going to zero. People don't believe in any asset, and they just think that everything's a scam, right? Everything's a scam when everything's going down. But I think when you buy a home too early, the first thing that happens when you buy a home too early is that you basically limit yourself to the location. I think you need to be very mobile in your younger years. You need to be able to move to different places for different opportunities. And most people say, "Oh, well, you could just rent it out." It's not that easy to just rent a home out. Yeah, you could get a realtor, you could get an agent to help you, but I know people that have done that, and it still takes months, to 4 or 5 months. And some people get tired of it and say, "You know what, I'm just going to stay in the house." Again, those little decisions, you got to understand, little split second decisions change the whole trajectory of your financial outcomes. So, if seconds change the trajectory of your financial outcomes, imagine waiting 4 to 5 months for a home to sell, or for you to rent out a home. All right, maybe your mind changes within a week. You know what? It's not renting out. Let me just take it off the market. Let me stay in this home. I don't want to find an apartment. I don't want to move. It's just one of those things. The longer you have to make a decision, the more often it is going to change. So a lot of the best decisions I've made have come from me making them very quickly and the ability for that decision to take place. So if I have to wait 3 to 4 months to sell a home, who knows what I'm going to be thinking in that 3 to 4 months? I might just abort the whole mission and stay in that home, and now I don't get exposed to all the other opportunities that are available in other areas. So that's one of the things too. You have to put a down payment as well. That's typically going to be over $20,000, especially with the home prices now. We have higher interest rates. Yes, interest rates are going to come down, but still, in the last couple years, we had high interest rates. So if you got into a home, you're paying a high interest rate. You had to put a lot of money down. Your mortgage is probably high up there. So I don't see the benefit in the beginning. I think that money is better. It's better positioned in a paper asset. And I actually made a video that talks about why paper assets are better than real estate. So you could go check that out. And I think I think a home could be beneficial maybe later on once you have a bunch of assets, and maybe it doesn't take up a lot of your portfolio. But I think once you make your home your biggest asset and that's all you have, I don't really think it's an asset. I think it's a liability. Remember, it's all these additional costs that come with a home: insurance costs, cut the grass, repaint the house, AC break, all these additional things that you need to take care of. It's your home, it's your property. You need to take care of it. And I don't think it's the best thing. I think it'll start you off in a deficit if you do that. Now, if you go for, multi-family in the beginning, if you have enough assets to do that where it's going to bring you some type of income, then that probably makes a little more sense. But even that's going to be a little bit tough. But yeah, I think home is number 4. I think avoid that in the beginning. Not saying you can't do it later, but yeah, I would avoid that in the beginning. Number 5 is an expensive luxury vehicle. I think, and the vehicles are expensive today. I think we're going to see a decrease in prices once these rates get cut. I think a lot of dealerships are going to have to cut back on those prices. You're seeing it now recently, but even still, the prices for cars are expensive, even for a brand name cars that are not that popular, right? Even a Honda or a Kia, that's a brand new one. It's going to run you $30,000-$40,000, and they're not the best product. And so you want to avoid getting these expensive vehicles in the beginning, especially in your earlier years. I think if you can get a used car, you can use Uber, or also where you live, maybe you get a place where it's close to your job, where it's close to places you go often. So even if you do the Uber drive, it's only going to run you $8 to $15 to do that move, to do that drive, or you get a used car. Right now, obviously, it's still going to come with expenses. But again, to my point, I wouldn't put a lot of resources into a car. You're going to have to pay insurance. If it's not electric, you're going to have to pay gas. And it's just one of those things. And in some situations, you have to pay for parking in these apartments downtown. You have to pay to park your car. So it's a lot of money for cars that people don't take into consideration when they get a vehicle. And if you add that it's a luxury vehicle on top of that, it's just going to be even worse, especially when the car starts to need maintenance. I think people need to rethink that decision and make sure that they don't do it early on. Once you have your assets in place, you have enough income coming in from some passive investments, maybe it's something you can think about again. But I think in the beginning, to not start in a deficit, you need to make sure that you don't get that early on. I think it's just going to be bad for you, right? Okay, so those are the 5 things. So let's go over them again. Number one is a lot of credit card debt. Don't try to get into credit card debt. If you do, make sure you have a plan to pay that credit card debt off. Number 2, toxic relationships. This could be with family. This could be with your spouse, your partner. Make sure you don't get into that early. That's going to kind of derail you, especially if they have toxic traits. Number 3, Number three was, let me see, what was number three? Get a house. I think number three was get a house. Um, and number four, yeah, getting a house. I think, with the down payments and stuff like that. Number four was getting a pet, or maybe number three was getting a pet, and then number four was getting a house. And then number five was getting a expensive car. It doesn't even have to be luxury, just an expensive car. I think all those five things are going to set you back financially, and try not to do those in your beginning stages, and I think you'll be okay. But that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.